They thought I would cry. Instead, I smiled, zipped my backpack, and walked out, carrying the backbone of their entire platform. I had written every line, and I knew exactly what they didn't back up. It started like any other Thursday: stale coffee, fluorescent lights, and the quiet hum of tension just beneath the surface. I was reviewing some back-end logic on my dual monitors, half listening to a Slack thread blowing up over an API bug someone introduced the night before. The kind of routine chaos you get used to when you're the only one who actually knows how the core architecture breathes. That morning, the CTO didn't say good morning. He never really did, but this time, his eyes didn't even meet mine. Instead, he whispered something to HR, who was already lingering by the glass door like a ghost with a clipboard. My stomach knew before my brain did. Something was off. By 10:03 a.m., I was invited into Conference Room B, the one with no windows and the flickering light that nobody ever bothered to fix. 2 people were already seated. Ethan, the head of HR, who always tried too hard to sound empathetic, and Michelle, the COO, with her phone face down but never actually off. "We're restructuring," Ethan said with that polished sorrow corporate types learn in workshops. Michelle chimed in before I could respond. "It's not personal. The company's moving in a new direction." A new direction? I was the one who built the system they were now pivoting on. From the very first prototype, I had written the foundational code, designed the architecture, and even patched other people's mistakes when things got close to launch. There was no direction without my work. But suddenly, my existence was an obstacle. I didn't ask for a reason. I didn't even blink. Because something else had already clicked in my mind, they thought they were letting go of just another developer, but they didn't understand what I had created, and more importantly, what I still owned. The ex-boss, Greg, made his entrance 5 minutes late. No apology, just his usual cologne and arrogance. "You can take everything that's yours," he said, not even sitting down. "You're not coming back." He might as well have handed me the detonator. I packed slowly, not because I was stalling, but because I was already planning. My terminal still open, a secure backup running in the background, my original repository, my private comments, the isolated branch with the core modules. All mine. I had written them on my own machine, under my own license, long before this startup decided they wanted to scale. As I zipped my backpack, I took one last glance at the office. Open plan, fake plants, soundproof phone booths that weren't really soundproof. People kept their heads down. No one said goodbye. No one made eye contact, except Leo, the intern, who gave me a nervous half wave. He knew. He'd seen the codebase, he'd seen the name stamped all over it, and by Monday they'd all see what happened when you tried to erase the author of the story, without reading the fine print. They thought the system would run without me. They didn't know what I had already pulled. I didn't sleep much that weekend. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't even revenge. It was something colder, a kind of surgical focus that settles in when you've been underestimated one too many times. I made tea, opened my laptop, and read through every single clause of the IP agreement I had signed when I joined the company. They had skipped it in onboarding. No proper orientation, no legal walkthrough, just a PDF buried in a chain of automated emails and a click to acknowledge checkbox. Sloppy. Dangerous. I wasn't. My original code, the one I'd started long before I joined, had been licensed under my name, publicly time-stamped, stored on a private GitHub repo with commit history that predated my first day at the company. That version, the clean, efficient, modular system that powered their entire backend, had been the skeleton they built their beta on. They never rewrote it. They just wrapped it in flashy interfaces, built features on top of it, and assumed no one would notice or care. But someone did. Me. I stared at the system architecture diagram I'd drawn a year ago on a Zoom whiteboard during a 9 p.m. sprint planning meeting. It was still the same. They never even removed the watermark in the corner. Schema Dawa V1 by Leah. They really thought they owned me, owned my work, owned my time. But now they were about to find out that ownership isn't declared. It's proven. Sunday night, I drafted an email to the company's CTO, Greg, and CC'd their newly hired IP counsel. The subject line was simple: code provenance clarification, urgent. I attached the repo hash, commit logs, license terms, and a polite note reminding them that parts of their core system were derived from independently authored software. and as such, required either license renewal or immediate removal. I gave them 72 hours. I didn't hit send. Not yet. First, I watched. At 6:04 a.m. Monday morning, I got a Slack message from Leo. Hey, have you seen what's happening? The system went down. Everything. Backend's throwing 503s. Greg's freaking out. I smiled, just a little. The core module I'd written was still running, but the wrapper they'd clumsily stitched over it had collapsed. Their devs had tried to patch it without understanding the flow, and in doing so, they broke the call stack. The one thing I had always warned them about. The one thing they never listened to. By 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. No caller ID, but I didn't need one. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:47, another call, this time from Michelle, ignored. At 10:03, a desperate email from Greg. Subject line, system access? He still didn't get it. I didn't delete anything. I didn't sabotage anything. I simply took what was mine. The rest? It unraveled on its own. I finally hit send at 10:45 a.m. The legal timestamp would matter later. An hour later, the IP council replied. Not to me, but to the entire executive team. I was CC'd. She holds the original rights. You're using her licensed material without valid transfer. Cease deployment until resolved. One sentence. But it landed like a meteor in their morning stand-up. Greg tried to save face in a reply all, spinning legal jargon he didn't understand, blaming a misalignment in understanding. I didn't respond, because there are no misunderstandings when you try to replace someone and forget they wrote the blueprint. They fired me thinking I'd vanish quietly. They didn't expect their entire system to follow me out the door. Have you ever been underestimated at work and then relied upon to fix the mess? Tell me about it in the comments. This story is just beginning. By Tuesday, the silence turned hostile. No more polite emails, no more soft pings. Just one loud, shared panic echoing through LinkedIn posts, Git logs, and late-night DMs from junior devs who suddenly realized the new system was duct-taped together with functions they couldn't trace. The calls stopped, not because they accepted defeat, but because they had finally looped in someone who could read the contract. I got a message from someone I didn't expect. The company's actual IP counsel, not Greg's pet hire, not someone on a contractor retainer, a real specialist. The subject line, can we discuss licensing terms? I didn't reply right away. I went for a walk first. The kind of walk where your body remembers how much weight it carried for too long. The kind of walk where the light hits just right and your breath tastes like freedom and vindication. I passed the old co-working space where I first started building the prototype. I remember debugging until 3 a.m. with a laptop balanced on a cracked coffee table. No salary, no team. Just an idea, and faith that clean code could carry its own weight. Now that code had broken a company's illusion of control. Back home, I sat at my desk, tea in hand, and reread the IP Council's message. It was carefully worded, neutral, almost, respectful. We're hoping to come to a constructive solution. The team recognizes the foundational importance of your original modules and is willing to explore options. Translation? They couldn't rebuild it. They had tried. They were hoping I'd save them. But I had questions. I asked for the full audit trail. Who had accessed my branch? Who had modified it? And whether they'd tried to reverse engineer any portions under a new name. I wasn't angry. I was exact. Language, after all, is another kind of code, one you don't get to refactor once it's on the record. They sent back logs, redacted, of course. But the metadata told its own story. Friday night, 2 devs, full access to my sandbox environment, attempts to export segments and push under a new repo. No license notices, no attribution. My lawyer, yes, I'd called one, smiled when he saw it. That's not just breach of agreement. That's willful misuse, and it's time-stamped. Still, I didn't threaten anything. I didn't need to. The pressure was doing the work for me. Greg resurfaced that afternoon with a new tone. Less bark, more sweat. We'd like to offer a consulting opportunity, short-term, premium rate, just to help get the system stable. I almost laughed. The same man who told me, you're not coming back, now offering a golden ticket to clean up his mess. But I wasn't interested in being their fix-it girl. I wasn't coming back. But that didn't mean I wouldn't own what they couldn't fix. and in the distance I could already sense it, not desperation anymore. Submission. Wednesday morning brought an email with a subject line that almost made me spit out my coffee. Urgent. Clarification request. Code ownership versus employment scope. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words soak in like the steam rising from my mug. So this was the new angle. Maybe the code I had written was theirs, by virtue of my time at the company. A bold move, considering what had already unfolded. But I understood what they were doing. They were flailing, grabbing at technicalities, praying for a clause that would magically erase the provenance of the lines I had authored before I ever signed their dotted line. Too late. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. He replied in under 5 minutes. "We'll respond formally. Let them make this mistake in writing." He knew what I knew. This wasn't a battle of servers or semicolons. This was a war of timestamps, licenses, and buried emails, and I had all three. Still, I opened my GitHub, not the public profile, the private repo they didn't know about, the one I'd used during those 3 a.m. prototype days. Dozens of commits, screenshots, logs, even voice notes I'd recorded while walking home in the rain, talking through architecture decisions to myself. Everything dated, everything mine. And then there was the contract. The standard IP clause they used hadn't been updated since 2014. It excluded prior works unless explicitly assigned in writing. No such document existed, not even a blurry PDF. In short, their system was built on foundations they never owned. I didn't say a word, didn't post, didn't tweet, didn't hint. I just let them keep emailing. Meanwhile, inside the company, the cracks were widening. Leo messaged me again, this time not from Slack, but from his personal email. "Hey, Greg's blaming you for the outage, says you planted something. But we all know the truth. I saw what they pulled from your branch. It wasn't even working yet." Poor Leo, smart enough to know better, but too junior to push back. "Just wanted you to know. I saved a copy of the audit logs, just in case you need them." I paused. The intern had receipts. The CTO was bluffing. And the legal team was sweating over a decade-old contract they never expected to weaponize itself. The irony? The system hadn't failed because of me. It had failed because of what they assumed they could take, without reading the fine print. They had fired a mind, not just a pair of hands. And now they were realizing hands don't hold rights. But minds do. Thursday came wrapped in fog, both outside my window and inside their company Slack, from what I heard. While I sipped my tea and watched fog smear the skyline, someone inside the company was desperately editing the internal documentation. Leo sent me screenshots. References to my schema were being removed, functions renamed, comments scrubbed like a digital crime scene cleanup. It was clumsy, desperate, transparent. You can't rewrite history with a backspace key. That afternoon, I received a letter. An actual printed envelope slid under my door, the paper thick with faux professionalism. Legal stationery, company seal, their official offer, consulting contract, 6-month term, $22,000 month. NDA included, of course. Re-entry conditional on non-litigious posture. It almost made me laugh. They were offering me a rope, not to save themselves, but to hang me with silence. I folded the letter once, then again. Then slid it back into the envelope and returned to my screen. Because just 1 hour before that, I'd had another meeting with someone who wasn't scrambling, someone calm, composed, precise, the IP council, not theirs, mine. We sat in a small office that smelled like eucalyptus and printer ink. She wore no jewelry, no perfume, just focus. She laid out everything we had. Commit logs from before employment, license agreement filed with timestamp, Slack screenshots, voice memos, even Leo's exported audit logs showing exactly when they'd entered my branch post-termination. "This isn't just violation," she said calmly. "It's exposure. They're deploying code they know they don't own." "And that makes it what?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Infringement. Potentially criminal if they don't remediate." It wasn't revenge, it was reality. They hadn't hired a developer. They'd invited an author, and now they were distributing her novel without credit. Or permission. That night, I didn't sleep. But it wasn't because I was anxious. It was because I was preparing the truth. I sat at my desk, opened a blank document, and began typing. A timeline, not a tweet, not a thread, not a press release, just facts. What I built, when I built it, what they took, when they took it, what I asked, what they ignored. A quiet weapon, signed by silence, backed by law, and ready to be seen if they pushed just one step too far. Friday morning began with a ping, not an email, not a Slack message, a private LinkedIn DM from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year. Karen Lin, former lead engineer. She left 2 weeks after I joined, said something about cultural misalignment. Now I knew exactly what she meant. Hey, just saw some chatter, heard what happened. Greg did the same to me, tried to absorb my framework after I left. Stay sharp, he's done this before. It was strange how clarity always comes from those no longer tied to the chaos. Karen's message wasn't just a warning, it was a signal. This wasn't the first time. This was a pattern. I messaged her back, short and to the point. I have proof. This time it won't disappear. While I typed, a fresh message from Leo popped up. They brought in an outside audit team. You triggered it. Greg's pacing. Audit. The magic word. Because once external eyes are on a code base, no amount of renaming functions or deleting comments can erase digital fingerprints. They were going to see it all. The scaffolding I had built. The pieces copied without permission. The sloppy attempts to rebrand theft as iteration. I imagined Greg sitting in his glass office, blinds half closed, collar loosened, pretending to still be in control. But leadership isn't volume. And power isn't presence, it's proof, and I had more of it than he realized. My lawyer had already prepped a cease and desist, not to fire, but to warn. No bluff, no drama, just structure, dates, facts, citations. That same document now sat in the inbox of their legal department, marked, pending response within 48 hours. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was tight, controlled, corporate. By noon, Leo sent me one last message for the day. Greg just got pulled into a call with the board. It didn't take a genius to guess the agenda: system outage, licensing violations, risk to investors. Greg had spent years trying to look like the genius behind the architecture. But when the system fell, it didn't collapse on me. It collapsed on the lie he built. And now, without code to hide behind, all he had left was noise. I closed my laptop. I didn't need to chase them. They were already running in circles, and all I had done was tell the truth. Saturday used to mean debugging in cafes, hoodie up, espresso cooling beside untouched toast. This Saturday was different. I woke up to my phone vibrating nonstop, not with messages, but with mentions. A thread was going viral, not mine. Karen's. She hadn't named names, she hadn't said Greg, she didn't need to. She posted a clean, articulate story of what it feels like to be erased from your own architecture, and what happens when that erasure is interrupted by timestamps, logs, and lawyers. The comments exploded. Same thing happened to me, early stage startup, no contract review. It's always the ones who say, we're a family, who ghost you at HR. Founders need to understand, code is authorship. You don't own the person just because you paid a salary. And then came the investor tag. A VC partner quietly reposted the thread, adding only 3 words. Due diligence matters. I didn't retweet. I didn't like. I didn't need to. Because suddenly, everything shifted. The silence around Greg was no longer respectful. It was strategic. He wasn't just the CTO with the broken system now. He was the risk, the uninsurable, the liability waiting to surface in the next audit. By mid-afternoon, I got a message from someone new. Hi, Leah. I'm part of the portfolio management team at V Capital. We'd appreciate a confidential conversation about your experience. No commitments, just clarity. Clarity. They didn't want drama. They wanted to protect their money. I said yes. Not because I wanted anything from them, but because I had nothing to lose. During the Zoom call, their background was staged to perfection. Books, succulents, a single coffee mug with the word integrity etched in gold. But their questions were surgical. Can you confirm the original commit dates? Was there any explicit assignment of IP in writing? Did you notify the company before action? Did they respond with acknowledgement or denial? I answered everything calmly, fact after fact, no emotion, no slander. And when I was done, the man in the gold-lettered mug sat back exhaled, and said something I didn't expect. You've handled this with remarkable restraint. I smiled. Because that's the thing no one tells you. The quiet ones aren't weak. They're watching. And when the time comes, they answer with receipts. Sunday was silent. Not empty. Not boring. Silent. Like the air after a storm has passed, but before anyone dares to step outside. I brewed coffee slowly. No rush, no Slack notifications, no legal pings. Just the subtle joy of quiet water boiling, the scent of beans, and a phone that didn't buzz. Until it did. One email. Subject. Transition of technical ownership. Formal acknowledgement. I clicked it. Read it once. Then twice. The signature at the bottom wasn't Greg's. It was someone else. Board-appointed interim CTO. No apology, no flattery, just language that had clearly been filtered through at least 3 lawyers and 2 PR consultants. This message serves to acknowledge your prior authorship and contribution to core infrastructure deployed in versions 2.1 through 4.3. As of this notice, those modules have been deprecated and will not be used in future deployments without renegotiated licensing or explicit written consent. I leaned back and exhaled. No fireworks, no gloating, just the unmistakable sound of corporate surrender dressed in suits and sanitized syntax. The document attached confirmed it. My name, my license, their withdrawal, their attempt to settle the fire before someone bigger smelled the smoke. I replied with a single line, acknowledged. No further use is authorized. Click, send, done. The war was over, not with a scream, but with a PDF. I left my apartment that afternoon for the first time in days, not for errands, just to feel something again. Fresh air, random faces, sun slicing through buildings. A strange peace settled in my shoulders, the kind that only comes when you've been proven right without raising your voice. Walking past a bookstore, I paused in front of the window. One of the displays read, "Invisible work, the cost of being brilliant in silence." Fitting, because that's what it was, wasn't it? They didn't steal the code. They stole the silence that came with it. The kind of silence you use to hold everything together day after day until someone says, "We're downsizing," and expects you to disappear. But I didn't disappear. I wrote the thing. I was the thing. And now, even as they tried to erase me, they had to sign papers saying I was real. Back at home, I opened my laptop, not to check mail, not to review logs, to build again, not for them. For me, Monday came without dread. For the first time in years, I didn't start the week with a sprint review, a passive-aggressive stand-up, or a color-coded Jira board that somehow always turned red. Instead, I opened a clean, white terminal, typed a few lines, watched the cursor blink like a heartbeat. Mine, not theirs. Outside my window, the city moved like it always had. But I was watching differently now. Not with anxiety, not with pressure, but with space. Room to observe, not just survive. Around noon, I got another email. This one from Leo. Subject. They're reshuffling everything. Greg's officially gone. The board brought in someone new. People are being quiet, but they all know why. He attached a photo. A blurry image from the office kitchen. The whiteboard, once full of sprint goals and product targets, now empty except for 3 words scrawled in marker. Documentation saves lives. I smiled. Because in the end, that's what I had been doing all along. Documenting, saving, keeping track, not just of bugs or functions, but of reality. What happened, when, and why. Leo followed up. They're rewriting the entire stack, starting over. But guess what? They're using your original schema as the base. With license, your name is in the internal doc now, first page. My name. Not hidden in a changelog, not buried in a commit, front and center. I didn't respond immediately. I just sat with it. The strange, quiet pride that comes not from revenge, but from surviving something that tried to erase you. It wasn't just about code. It was about credit, about being seen. I went to my fridge, pulled out a cold bottle of sparkling water, and toasted the empty kitchen. Not to victory, to integrity, because through all of it, the meetings, the silence, the push-outs, the panic, I hadn't screamed, I hadn't hacked, I hadn't lashed out, I had documented, I had licensed, I had waited. And the truth? It doesn't need to shout to shake a room, it just needs proof. And time. The system still runs, some of it mine, some of it not. That's how these stories usually go. Parts of you remain in code long after you leave the building. But I didn't need to watch it anymore. I wasn't the shadow behind the stack trace. I wasn't the emergency contact when their CTO panicked. And I sure as hell wasn't the ghost in their Git history. I was free. Not just legally, not just professionally. Mentally. It's strange. The moment you realize you don't have to fight anymore, you don't have to prove anything. Not because they gave you permission, but because you took back the narrative, not with noise, with documentation. I printed the formal acknowledgement letter, the one where they confirmed I held the rights, framed it, not for vanity, for memory, because people forget, even I forget, what it felt like to be invisible, to build and be erased, to code and be credited only when something breaks, to leave and still be the structure. Not anymore. My new code base is simpler, smaller, cleaner. It doesn't need a team. It doesn't need a CTO breathing down my neck. It just needs me. And the one thing they could never really take, authorship. A few weeks later, I saw Greg's name again, this time in a dry, automated newsletter. Leadership transitions at company name. Former CTO departs after realignment. No fanfare, no tribute post, just a quiet update under the HR section, sandwiched between 2 job listings and a link to apply for a discount dental plan. I didn't laugh, but I did exhale. Some people build for noise, others build for permanence. Guess which one lasts longer? Later that day, Leo emailed me again. They're teaching new hires your licensing case and onboarding now, called it the Leah Protocol. That made me smile. Because for years, I'd been the quiet one, the calm one, the one who stayed late, fixed things silently, skipped the spotlight. Now, I was a protocol, a precedent, and I didn't burn a thing to get there.